And we're live, and we're going to talk about an episode of the Twilight Zone, the 16mm shrine. Try to get all the title in with the actual spelling and the whole thing. Right then, I'll try and do the Serling-esque intro. Here we go. Got a little bit of a cough. Picture of a woman looking at the picture. Move the great of another time. Once brilliant star in a firmament no longer a part of the sky, eclipsed by the movement of earth and time. Barbara Jean Trenton, whose world is a projection room, whose dreams are made out of celluloid. Barbara Jean Trenton, struck down by the... Oh, yeah, this is a tough sentence at the end. It's a long one. Barbara Jean Trenton, struck down by hit-and-run years and lying on the unhappy pavement, trying desperately to get the license plate of fleeting time. Oh, I messed it up. I'll have to say it again. Barbara Jean Trenton, struck down by hit-and-run years and lying on the unhappy pavement, trying desperately to get the license number of fleeting fame. Wow, it's a bit purple. Right, I'll try and read through this okay. Aging actress Barbara Jean Trenton secludes herself in a private screening room where she watches her old films. Gently but desperately, her agent tries to coax her out into the real world by arranging a part for her in a film and by bringing a former leading man to visit her. But these acts only drive her further into the past. Bringing her a meal, the maid finds the screening room empty and is horrified by what she sees on screen. She summons the agent, who turns the projector back on. On the screen, he sees the living room of the house filled with stars as they appeared in the old films. Barbara Jean is the center of attention. He pleads with her to come back, but she only throws her scarf towards the camera and departs. The film runs out. In the living room, the agent finds Barbara Jean's scarf. "To wishes, Barbie," he says, "to the ones that come true." And I'll try and do the closing thing. To the wishes that come true, to the strange, mystic strength of the human animal, who can take a wishful dream and give it a dimension of its own. To Barbara Jean Trenton, movie queen of another era, who has changed the blank tomb of an empty projection screen into a private world. It can happen. In the Twilight Zone. Over to you, Jeff.
If only.
That was...
I don't know how many times I've prayed for the Twilight Zone. No, but the other thing I was thinking of, he says he's like mocking her, not mocking her, but kind of, I don't know, what's the word, upbraiding her for living 15, 20, 25 years in the past. And I'm like, man, that's nothing. I live 29 years in the
past. Yes, I was wondering how you would relate to it. So,
short review for several reasons. I'll just say it's relatable, but the characters are thoroughly unlikable.
Yeah.
So it's not very entertaining to me. I found myself checking several times how much longer in the episode, because this was the first one I've seen where I did start to get bored. I'm like, these characters are not enjoyable, so I just want them to go away. Because, like I said, I can relate to it, but I started to say I wouldn't treat people that way. I can't say I never have, but I still feel like under those circumstances, I wouldn't. The fact that I prefer the way things were in the past in many ways doesn't mean that I can't still live in the present and take advantage of some opportunities.
Yeah.
I don't have the. So I think it's like I relate to that, the major aspect of the, wanting to live in the past kind of thing, but I don't relate to the more prima donna-esque type thing, like, this part's beneath me or something like that, because, I want to be what I was in the past. I don't feel that way. I feel like if I had somebody that was finding me opportunities for something that I could do now, that I could still enjoy it. So, that's... and do sometimes. So that's where it differs, and they make everybody just you know, the first like 2/3 of it is just like, you know, a movie if I just went through the channels, because it's like
Yeah.
uninteresting characters saying uninteresting things. And I don't understand why the maid or whatever is so horrified by seeing her on the, like, is that, you know, I was, see that, because that's what I first thought it was going to be. She wished herself into the screen. And then when she came in and screamed, I thought, oh, it's going to be some kind of horrifying twist where she's like older in there or something, you know, some.
Ah.
And no, it wasn't. It was just exactly what she wanted. So it's like, really? That's it? That was the thing you screamed and dropped your tray about, you know? I'm like, you know, it would have been a much more interesting. It's still, you know, all the setup still would have been just as boring, but it still would have been more interesting ending if they had at least had something other than what she wanted to come true. Exactly. You know, that there'd been some kind of, because I do, again, I said this probably last week or last couple of weeks, that I remember Twilight Zone episodes that had a very similar thing where somebody wanted something, but there was very much a be careful what you wish for kind of theme to it, where something would go wrong based, you know, what it is that they wanted wouldn't come true the way that they wanted it to. So that would have been more interesting to have it just not just be, oh, okay, she just wished herself into the thing, got exactly what she wanted. So it's like, okay. I mean, I guess it's a happy ending, sort of,
Yeah, I
which is
mean,
unusual for Twilight Zone, but, you know.
you sort of usually second guessing twists. Well, maybe the twist is that there wasn't a twist, really.
Well, I guess, but it's sort of like I definitely feel like the show was definitely finding its legs, so to speak, as they say at this point, and it hadn't really come to an impressive format yet. I guess in that way, as it seemed kind of. Again, it's like all set up for not much of a payoff, or not really any payoff. So definitely the least enjoyable one I've seen so far since we started watching.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with her being a prima donna, is that if she was like a nicer, more positive person, then you would think, oh, she would still get work playing older roles, mothers. So there needs to be some kind of plot mechanism, reason why she's not getting these older roles, and it's got to be one of two reasons. I would, or other things could come in like drug abuse or alcoholism or something. But where, so for instance, it might be that she was famous because she was really good looking, but wasn't that good an actress, and they could have like mentioned to the fact like that you never were that good anyway, or so it's like either that's the reason, or this prima donna stuff where she only wants the big parts. So what changes would you have made, Jeff, to the characters?
Well, that's a good question, and the two things that I thought of while you were saying that was, number one, the mothers, you know, they act as if this like ancient, you know, the guy says like 40-ish or something, and I realize it's Hollywood, but still, it's like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just, times have changed since '59 in terms of that there's a lot more famous older actors now or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like a lot of the actors of my generation, and when I say my generation, I mean like the people that were popular when I was like a teenager, a lot of them are still popular and still getting lots of work now. And in fact, there seems to be, you know, like beyond that, the younger people, there weren't as many breakout stars as there seemed to be in that era, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But the second thing, when you said what would I change? For one thing, they needed to put more old age makeup on her if they were going to make it seem like she was, you know, much older. That's the problem, is there wasn't much difference in the way she looked in the present time than she did, you know, in the old movies. And so that struck me as you know, I don't know what the right word is, but inconsistent. But that's it's like, if they were trying to stress that, oh, she thinks she can still be this young person, but she looks so much older, then they need to make her look much older, like they did with the guy, with the co-star, that they did succeeded in making that be a striking difference. I don't even know if that was the same actor. If it was, they did a really good job on the makeup.
Yeah, it's a different actor.
Okay, well, see there, it's obviously it's a little easier to do when you have a different actor. But
Otherwise,
you can make them,
that would be outstanding makeup.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a different actor that can convincingly look like that person older, and I think he did, so they did a good job in terms of finding somebody who, with the looks, and that was the most important thing because he didn't really have to act much, so it didn't have to be that convincing a performance. But with her, who was on screen the whole time, basically, they definitely needed to make her look older than they did.
Yeah.
So that was, and there's a number of ways of doing that because I've seen shows where, they're set in the present and they'll have scenes featuring a younger version of that person where they still use the same actor, and they're able to more. That's harder to do than obviously than old age makeup. It's easier to make someone look older than it is to make them look younger. But you still needed to have one or the other. Either they needed to make a better effort in making the old scenes her look a lot younger in that, or they needed to make her look older now. So I figure it would be easier to make her look older now, and it just wasn't convincing. So that was as far as the biggest production flaw, that would be it to me.
Yeah, they could also make her. They could change her figure as well.
Yeah, and right, and she could have gained weight or just something that would have stressed that changes. And you mentioned the possibility of like drug abuse or alcoholism. And they did briefly mention, they sort of alluded to that with the she was drinking at 11 in the morning, but they didn't stress it at all. And I don't know whether that was some of these things, I don't know how much censorship or other things are involved in terms of having to deal with, what was allowed to be portrayed in those days.
Yeah, like
so I don't know if maybe.
Sorry.
I don't know if maybe the network, wanted to shy away from having her, be more alcoholic or whatever. So, I don't know, but as it was, they just, I guess a recurring thing that I've said in a few of these reviews is that they didn't put a lot of depth in the character. So, and it feels like they had time to do that with this character.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, they just sort of rehash the same stuff over and over again for 20 plus minutes. And it's like, it really seems like this was one where he didn't have a full script, and there's just sort of repetition without really much. See that shot right there that you just had, like they showed, that was the movie, and she looks the same as she does in the other. So it's like really not enough making her look older.
Yeah. It's a bit ridiculous. What's weird is this was sort of like produced 16th, and yet they showed it 4th. So, and you know what it's like in the middle of a series, usually the writing sags a little bit. Usually have the high point in the middle, but like either side of the high point, it sags a bit, and then they try and make an effort towards the end.
I think it kind of depends. I know you've said that before, but I don't think that's true necessarily with every show.
Okay.
I can think of some where it got stronger later in the season, especially in first seasons of shows where they kind of have to sort of find their wings, find their legs, whatever you want to call it. They kind of flesh out the characters and really get it on solid ground. So there's a lot of shows I think sort of peak towards the end of the first season when they really start to hit their stride.
Have you seen this guy before?
He looked familiar. I don't remember from what, but he definitely looked familiar.
He was in the Time Element.
Well, that'd probably be the why then, because that'd be the most recent thing I would have seen him in.
I think he was better in that. In here, I think the thing that got me was, the characters weren't very interesting. The acting, the only bit I liked from the acting point of view was old Jerry, the old guy. And apparently, it says in the book that that particular actor was in the Maltese Falcon. So with Humphrey Bogart. So here's an example of like a guy who was famous and had aged. And apparently there's a story, I'll go over it later on, about the actual director. That the actual, like, he was an older director, and he was, and the director was a little bit like Barbara Jean Trenton.
Well, there won't be much later on, so get to it as soon as you want to. But I'll just say this guy that's still on shot, the agent guy, he's got a great voice. That's the strongest thing for me, is that even if I didn't necessarily recognize his face, the voice would have hit me. Is that I definitely have heard this voice before, and it's a good one.
Also, with the actress that played Barbara Jean Trenton, I'm just going to call her Barbara Trenton, that she pronounced one of those words that's like in between, like, so say some British people will say fast and some Americans will say fast. She did that thing where it's like halfway in between, and it's like, what vowel is that? And it's like, okay, American theatre standard, where you would have some people talk like that. So if there was which movie would you like to live in?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Honestly, the first one that popped into my head was Back to the Future.
Ooh.
But that's kind of a cheat, I guess. But it's sort of like anything where there's a time machine, you kind of have that element of being able to have endless variety or whatever. If you don't like where you are, you can go somewhere else.
I actually so this is what people could have like before VHS, and you'd actually have it on quite a big screen. I just wondered how many people had a sort of setup like this, and did you know anybody who had this kind of setup with like who could like watch movies in a 16mm format? In their own like private theater.
But in terms of like a movie where the character was most relatable, one that pops in my head is the Adam Sandler version of Mr. Deeds, because personality-wise, I was a lot like him, but he ends up with Winona Ryder, so that would be pretty good too.
So I was thinking you would definitely be in a film if it was called Jeff's Awesome Adventures.
Well, yeah, obviously that would be the best one.
I just think that he had the perfect look for old Jerry. So I'll show you. So that's old Jerry, and then they got the actor.
But you bring up a good point though, because what I was thinking as I was watching this was, when I watch anything, like I try to put myself in sort of the environment, say, how would I be in this circumstance? And that was what made it harder to enjoy, was I feel like in her position, like I can relate to being in that position, but my choices would have been different as far as how I acted towards people, especially when there was people, all it really takes. This is the thing, I guess it's hard to understand for somebody who has not lived a life where people are basically serving you all the time.
Yeah.
Sorry to say without servants, but it's not even just like house servants, but like having an agent, having people that are like trying to create opportunities for you. The closest I've had obviously was my parents, doing things for me growing up. But that's the thing, is I feel like somebody's willing to set up an opportunity for me that I can do something that I enjoy doing, then I can't relate to rejecting that. It's like when I talk about I live in the past, that's my coping with my present. That's my what's the word? Not default. Fallback. That's my fallback life. It's not my choice of the best life.
Yeah, but she's
that's the difference. Is that I would. And obviously, I don't have the professional accomplishments that she does. So I can't say for sure if I'd have what my attitude would be towards that. If the living in the past was based on my past accomplishments as opposed to just past um, entertainment or environment. But anyway,
So here's the point about the director, so we can sort of fit because we're short on time. The 16mm shrine marked director Mitchell Leeson's third and last Twilight Zone and his best. I thought it was very well directed, says Buckhoughton, largely because Mitch had a feeling for how the people could get that way. He undoubtedly reminisced about situations that he'd been in when he was on top. Perhaps this Sunset Boulevard come Twilight Zone struck Leeson even closer to home than Houghton might expect. He still lived in the past, explains George Clemens, drove his Rolls Royce, had a chauffeur, insisted on a lot pass, and so forth. He wasn't getting enough money to live that way, but he was a real talented man in his day. Well, always talented, but he wasn't able to adjust to television. He wanted to make television like a feature picture. So, I mean, even though in these days, this wasn't shot on television cameras, it was shot on film because the industry was in Hollywood. They had all this infrastructure for shooting on tape. So at the time, you would have the sitcoms would be shot on tape and videotape, and all the dramas would be shot on film. And so probably the director like think, oh, well, we're shooting it with cameras. Yes, but we've not got the time to shoot it like a film. So same technology, but you got to do it quicker. And then this
right before the credits, where it showed him sitting there, was that actually on your version of the show?
Yes, and one of the reasons why I thought it's there with a cigarette. So
okay, yeah, I didn't have that, so on the Amazon Prime version doesn't show that.
Yeah, but I think you wouldn't. I think we mentioned this before that you wouldn't have liked that anyway because he talks a little bit about the next episode.
Oh, okay, so it's like
you don't like the info like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
I just like the attitudes. Like, so it's all right to smoke, but not to show a lot of drinking. So, because they know about alcoholism then, but
they did show her drinking quite a bit, but they didn't really talk about it like that was causing any of the problems.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Then this is just a bit about a couple of the thespians in it. Under Leeson's shorthand, under Leeson's shorthand, Ida Lupino, star of movies High Sierra and They Drive by Night, and Martin Balsam as her agent. And then this is where it says stuff that I don't agree with. Give performances of a subtlety, control, and conviction that are astounding for a half-hour television show. Well, I don't agree with that. Jerome Karen also appears in the episode as a shockingly aged former leading man. Karen, too, harkened back to the golden age of movies. In The Maltese Falcon, he played Miles Archer, Sam Spade's murdered partner, for whom Mary Astor takes the fall. And then he just talks about bitterness and nostalgia pervade the episode. I mean, I would have been all right with the characters if they were better acted.
And see, I kind of feel the opposite. I don't think that the acting was bad at all. I just think they didn't have much to go with. The story didn't have much to it. Again, so it was just repetition. It's like, let's make this character, she wants to be what she was, and she's living in the past, and she's bitter about it, and she treats people badly. Okay, I got that in the first 5 minutes, and then they just keep doing it.
Yeah, I would have done what we did with Jerry. I would have got an actress who was about 10 years older, and I would have got a good looking actress to play in the like scenes from the past.
Yeah, so to me, it wasn't the acting that was unconvincing. It was more the story and the production choices, like not making her look old enough, or So I don't fault the actors for that, or even the director. I wouldn't disagree with them saying the direction was good, because I don't think there was any point where I was like, a directorial choice was the problem.
Yeah.
because I don't think the director would have probably been the one having a say about the old age makeup. Maybe he would. I don't know. I don't know at that particular production how much the director had a say in that sort of thing. I mean, obviously could have asked for it, not necessarily demanded, but might have asked the producer, "Can we make her look older?"
I think.
But who knows? The actress may have said, "No, don't."
Yes,
and
yeah, these
they
things
went
happen.
with that. Who knows what behind the scenes shenanigans took place?
Yeah. I'll give a little bit more detail on the act. What I should have said is that the acting to me was faulty. It wasn't one of these things where someone acts on screen and they stink up the whole place for every second they're on screen. It's just, to me, there were those moments, those faulty moments. And usually you get this with people who have been taught to act in a technical way. Whenever it gets to a bit where it's like proper heartfelt emotion, they're acting it rather than feeling it. And it's like somebody who can't hit certain notes when they sing and they falter. So it wasn't atrocious acting. I'll say it was acting that had its faulty moments. Like towards the end, Richard Balsam guy, when he's like getting emotional to the screen, that got a little bit hammy to me.
Yeah, I would say that they would have, again, maybe a director choice, or maybe that was the script. You know, I would have. He's good at, I don't know how to describe it, at the more intensity rather than emotion.
Mm.
And so he was good in the scenes where he is more like Rod Serling, I guess, in terms of the way he reads the opening. That guy would be good at reading that sort of thing too, because he's got that voice and has the ability to do that kind of conveying intensity thing. But yeah, I agree. In the final part, it wasn't really convincing. But again, I think that was more the fault of the story and than it was the actor.
It might be a case of what Peter Davison calls end of episode acting, where you have to like increase the intensity towards the climax in Doctor Who. But one thing I'll say is I'm almost lost my train of thought. Darn it. And that is... Damn.
Well, perfect time to wrap up then.
Oh, dearie me. I'm going to give myself a few more seconds to try and...
do a 30-second video later where you do an addendum when you think of it.
You know what, folks? That's it. Just pressured for time, and I can't remember, but it was a fantastic point. Just to imagine how good it was and then use that as to what I was going to say. Right, so,
well, like I said, if you think of it, write it down, and then you can use it in a future thing. So.
Oh, Rod Serling, voice, the guy. Oh, I don't know what it was. Right, so we're going to have to stop now, folks.
I'll give it a 4 out of 10.
Ooh. Yeah, I think I'll give it that as well. Because, I'm tough on acting. I want good acting. Like Homicide: Life on the Streets. There we go. I'll stop it now.